We want to welcome former Utah Governor Gary Herbert with us today to break down a big discussion that's happening today here in the state of Utah about the future of international trade. Former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and other national leaders are here in Utah. Governor, thanks so much for being with us today.
Happy to be here.
So Utah always seems to, as we say, hit above its weight class. We've got a lot of people here that have interesting ideas. They've served important roles in our government. Why here in Utah?
Well, I think we are a culture of overachievers, and I think we enjoy international business. We are kind of an international state when you think about it. Probably the most bilingual state for sure in America, one of the most bilingual places on the planet. So we're built for international trade, and the summit today is a lot about international trade.
The international trade community, I think everyone right now is paying really close attention to tariffs, what happens next, and I think the question marks are the biggest concern for people right now is they don't know what's going to happen, if the pause is really going to be a pause, if tariffs are going into place. What was the overall arching theme on tariffs today, or were there a lot of diverse opinions?
I think the overarching theme is probably we have chaos. We don't understand. There's a lack of predictability. Uncertainty is becoming the norm. It'll eventually settle in. I think most people feel we just hang in there and things will eventually work themselves out. Most people they talk about say I'm not really in favor of tariffs. And sometimes they're reluctant to criticize the president for imposing tariffs, which is what he said he was going to do in the campaign. So how do we navigate that as states? For example, I think Utah is a state that says we're open for business. We'll deal with anybody. That may not be what's coming out of Washington, D.C., but for states, we're sovereign. We have the opportunity to do business with other countries, and we are.
We are sovereign, but if you go make a deal with another country and you bring those products back to the state, it still has to abide by the federal laws and whatever those tariffs are in place, correct?
The costs will go up, there's no question about it, and it probably doesn't help us in the short term, maybe in the long term. And I think President Trump's got two different ideas, and they're kind of competing. One is, I just want fairness across the board. If you charge 5%, I'll charge 5%. And that's what he said in his first term. I sat and listened to him talk about it. This time it's a little more depth and a little more broad, and some of the people think it's more about China. What can we do to isolate China and make sure that they're playing fair? And they are not, and everybody knows they're not. So this is, I think, is a strategy. Whether it's going to work or not, who knows?
A lot of people say that this might be the art of the deal that we're watching happening. China's a big concern, and Mike Pompeo led the CIA. He was also Secretary of State during his time. He served the first Trump administration. He was not invited back for a second term. Did he give any reasons as to why he's not back for round two?
That part didn't come up, and I can tell you if he wasn't invited back, big mistake. He's a very bright, smart, intelligent, learned person who's got a lot of experience. Graduated #1 in his class from West Point in engineering, of all things. Been an entrepreneur and a business person. Went to Harvard Law School, became an attorney, practiced law for a few years. Then ran for Congress, 4-term congressman, CIA director, and finally Secretary of State. He's a very, very capable man.
He understands the threat that China is. He also understands why it's important that we do have trade agreements with them. During his years in office, he talked a lot about how Uyghurs were being treated in China. He was talking about trade, talking about security. What were his thoughts today, specifically on tariffs with China, and what he thinks should happen there?
Well, he thinks we're going to weather the storm. He thinks you can't ignore China, but China can't ignore America either. So we've got to find some middle ground there that we can work together for the good of everybody, including our own selfish best interests. But that's not the only thing out there. We talked about Russia and Ukraine, what's taking place there. We talked about the flare-up here in the Middle East, which is always kind of seems like a powder keg with India and Pakistan. We talked about that, and so he weighed in on all of those things today, and it was very interesting to hear him talk.
Well, it's a big world. We're also a very small and interconnected world, and whether it's trade or how we all travel, what happens in one part of the country is never isolated. It happens to all of us here. What are your thoughts after walking away and hearing his insights on what's still happening with the war in Russia and Ukraine and also in Israel as well?
I think caution is what he would say. Predictability would be nice if we had it, but we won't for a while. And I think everybody needs to plan their future. The great news is you're here in Utah, and Utah does have a very healthy economy, and so if you're going to have a base of operations, there's probably no better place than Utah. We just saw the U.S. News and World Report came out and said #1 state in America, and we've been, since they started in 2017, the first came out, we've always been in the top 5 economically. So business-wise, economically, we're in good shape here in Utah. It's going to have some impact short term. The worry is what's going to be the long-term impact.
What should Utah business owners take away? They didn't get to sit in on this meeting today where there's talk of tariffs, but a lot of them buy things from overseas. It's part of how they work. Should they be concerned? Do they need to be saving up extra money and trying not to pass along extra cost to consumers? Or should all of us be saying to ourselves, things are going to cost a little more for a while?
I think we all probably need to reassess and reevaluate where we're at. Certainly business is going to have to do that because of the uncertainty. We just don't know. We'll find out as we live the future. But it's always nice to have a rainy day fund. We do it at the state level with the legislature, and so we've been able to prepare for the Great Recession, COVID. Well, this is another kind of a niche on the chain of challenges that we're facing. But I think everybody should save for the rainy day and be prepared. That can't always happen. Depends on where you're at economically. But businesses need to plan for a little bit of uncertainty, I think, over the next 6 months.
Republicans across the country and here in Utah are splintered between a more conservative middle or supporting President Trump, and some people support President Trump on some issues and not others. As you're looking at President Trump's first 100 days in office and looking forward, do you see his long game and that you understand what he's going for and that you believe this is headed in the right direction, or do you have concerns?
Well, I think we just don't know all the facts, and we don't understand really what's the motivation for what he's doing. He's not really good at explaining things, and I think that's part of the problem. What is your end game? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it just a matter of having fairness, which is what we talked about in 2016 administration? Make sure that however we're being treated, we'll treat them the same. It's fair, equal, fair trade, along with free trade. Or is it we're trying to actually punish somebody? We're trying to get China to come to the table and be more fair and decent about what they're doing. Some in the White House are advocating for this is for show, but we're trying to actually zero in on China. So I don't know. We'll find out probably as we go through the process and see what he says. I've talked to a lot of people in Washington, our own congressman. The common phrase is, I'm not really happy about tariffs. I'm not really a big supporter of tariffs. And yet they don't want to criticize the president because they don't know exactly what he's trying to accomplish, and let's wait and see is kind of what they're saying. Let's hold their feet to the fire. Let's hope the future's bright. I expect it will be here in Utah, as bright as it can be any place in the world. Doesn't mean we won't have uncertainty and challenges, but we're in a good place here in Utah.
Governors, even former governors, have a seat at the table. I think President Trump listens. If you were to give him any words of advice right now, what would your advice be?
To President Trump?
Yes.
Well, I would say this. He has some good ideas. He needs to articulate them better so we understand what his motivations are, what his end game is, what is he trying to accomplish. There's too much uncertainty. And I think the process does count, and maybe just pushing everything off the edge of the cliff is a little bit hard. Maybe the glide pattern ought to be a little more of a slope so we don't have everybody dying at the same time. Let's plan for it, anticipate it, and have a smaller bump than if we just get pushed off the cliff. And I think that's where Trump probably could do a better job.
Another big issue that we're looking at with the Trump administration is immigration, illegal immigration, legal immigration. And right now we're seeing, if not more, at least ICE being more forward in talking about their deportations, their process, and what's happening. Here in Utah, we're a state that has been very welcoming to immigrants, to refugee communities. Do you believe that Utah has maybe been too welcoming and created problems of our own with illegal immigration and crime?
I don't think so. Can you be too nice? I mean, part of that is just being nice and respect humanity. I think we need to make sure that we abide by the laws, though. That being said, but we treat people decent even if they're breaking law. We do it with the criminals. We put them in jail and in prison. But we treat them with respect. So I think the Utah Compact gave us guidelines of how we should handle that. I think that's a good guideline. And again, I think we're trying to do that here in Utah. We sometimes get confused between in-migration, the people that are here undocumented versus refugees. Refugees are here legally. They go through a vetting process, and so we've taken more than our probably fair share of refugees, and we're open for that to happen in the future. But I can tell you right now, the country needs to reassess what we're doing. I think it's not a matter of just securing the border, it's also making sure the gate works. The gate's not functioning properly.
And that's a job for Congress.
Absolutely. We tried to do it the Utah way. We passed some laws back in my administration in the early days, and we got challenged in court by the federal government. And we were told by the courts, this is not your deal. This is a federal issue, and so what you're doing is inappropriate. Okay, and then President Obama tried to do it by executive order, and he got sued. And
said, what did he specifically try to do?
He tried to, by executive order, do immigration reform. Mm-hmm. Then he gets sued, and as I talked to him about the same, I've been sued, you've been sued. He said, yeah, we've got to get the Congress to act. And that's the truth, that's the answer. We've had this issue since Ronald Reagan, and we all know it's a problem, immigration. Why can't we come together and come up with a common sense approach? Maybe it's a common ground, maybe it's not 100% what each side wants to have, but let's get 50% of it and get it done.
What's the real reason it can't happen? Every time I talk to our congressional leaders, our senators, our representatives, they all say we want to get this done and it's the other person's fault. But Republicans and Democrats are always blaming each other, and it's going to take both sides. So is it always an election year, or what's the holdup?
That's part of the problem. Of course, it's us versus them, and them is always the enemy. Can't be the other party, can't let them have a win. And they use it for a re-election campaign rhetoric. And so what happens, unfortunately, in my view, is we have too many in Congress that set aside solving the problem as a top priority to getting reelected is the number one priority, and then they get reelected, but the people suffer. We've got to have some statesman-like approach and say, you know what, let's come together and let's solve the problem of immigration. They can do it. Again, secure the border is an important part of it, but getting the gate to work so people can come and go. We have a lot of people that come here and work in Utah that would like to go home, but they're afraid if they go home they can't come back. So fix the gate, and I think that would be the best thing to do. And then hold our feet to the fire in Congress and saying, you know what, it's your responsibility, courts have spoken, you've got to come up with some kind of a solution, and don't worry about re-election. We'll back you. Find a solution, we'll still vote for you.
So put the pressure onto your congressional leaders. While we wait for that to happen, we're not holding our breath because we know that could be a while. We certainly hope it'll happen. President Trump wants to deport all illegal immigrants, whether they've committed crimes or not. Right now, there's a new law that was just passed by the Utah legislature that makes it easier for people who commit misdemeanors. If they're in jail for 365 days, a full year, they're in the pipeline to be deported easier. There was a law passed in 2019 that made it harder. Do you believe that this was the right move and this helps get people out of our country that are creating problems, or do you believe we should have stuck with the leniency of 2019?
I think the numbers have shrunk significantly, those of crossing the border illegally, and that's because there's enforcement taking place. They know that's happening, so that's making it a deterrent. But I can tell you, again, this is a place where President Trump is not articulating what he wants to do. As I was back in Washington here a week ago and talking to some of the congressional members, they're saying, unless you're a criminal, ICE isn't going to come after you. If you're productive, you've got a job, you're doing good things, even though you're undocumented, ICE isn't going to come and get you. So they think one thing, President Trump is saying something different, a lot more aggressive. What's the truth? Maybe somewhere in the middle. But it's, again, an uncertain sound that we don't know what to march to.
People online right now like to fight about whether Utah is a sanctuary state or not. Do you believe Utah is a sanctuary state, or are we a state that has laws and people have to abide by them?
Yeah, we're not a sanctuary state. We're a welcoming state. We're nice people. You know, we treat people with respect. You know, the kind of the religious view, we're all children of God, we're brothers and sisters. What's the fight about? There is a right way to come into the country and the state of Utah, and there's a wrong way. And certainly the Utah Compact talked about respecting the rule of law. So we can be nice about it, but we will enforce the rule of law, and we are doing that in the state of Utah.
We only have a couple minutes left, so I want to switch to another border. Israel and Palestine and Gaza right now. I think there's been a lot of hope that there would be something figured out there where there could be peace and rebuilding. It doesn't seem to be headed in that direction. Was that spoken about today at the conference?
Not the Middle East, generally speaking, is a hot spot. You know, it's always seems to be unrest. has religious leanings back there, fighting for thousands of years each other. They don't trust each other. I've been there. I met with President Netanyahu a number of times, and he certainly respects Utah, and we have a mutual respect for Israel. But the challenge over there, you know, with terrorist groups embedded in the different countries, upset, it doesn't take much for them to get upset, and they believe, you know, God tells me to fight, and I'll fight. So it's a hard thing to bring peace to the Middle East, but it's something that ought to be a top priority, certainly for the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and for the President himself too, seeing what can we do to live in peace. The Middle East could erupt at any time. We all know that. That could be the beginning of World War III.
But you believe it's a worthy goal to keep working towards?
Oh, absolutely. We don't stop, you know. It's a worthy cause. It's something we ought to be fighting for. And some fights are worth having, and we need to work out there and see what we can do to bring people together and live in peace and harmony. That's the goal. I know it's a goal we all talk about, but we ought to never stop striving for that.
Another goal, this one is one that our kids are probably wanting us to look at more, AI. We talk about it, and for a lot of us, it's a big cloud that we don't quite understand. Our kids are diving in deep to it. Businesses are starting to, the bad guys are, the good guys are, and it's something that we really have to be learning and understanding. Is that something the state of Utah is focusing on as we move forward with business and figuring out the right way to use AI?
Well, I think everybody's talking about it. What does it mean?
Yeah.
And we're doing it at the Herbert Institute. We're actually doing a research study on what AI is going to mean and how it's going to impact us as a society. People are worried. Some are scared. Is AI going to take over? We'll be the slaves, and artificial intelligence will be telling us what to do. I don't think that's going to happen. Will it take away jobs? There may be a transfer of jobs. I think, like technology's had in the past, it'll create maybe more opportunities. But the third thing that causes me the most concern is that artificial intelligence is getting so good, and will get so good, you won't be able to tell the difference between fake and authenticity. Fake and true. What's right out there? And particularly in politics, I mean, it's already kind of a hard thing out there. What's he saying? Does he mean it? And what does he stand for? But artificial intelligence is going to make it really hard to know whether the person really said it. They'll make an image. They put out one for me running for President of the United States.
And you're not running. You'd like
I'm
to
not.
clear that up? Okay, good.
They made it, and I sent it to my kids, and my kids said, "Hey, Dad, why don't you tell us?" I mean, that's how good the artificial intelligence was. So if you can't tell truth from fiction with AI, that is a significant issue we'll have to address going forward.
And this is an ongoing project at the Herbert Institute?
It is.
When do we expect some answers or some ideas to build off of?
We've met with some of the folks, and we're doing some studies there to see what it means. We're worrying about what it'll mean to politics and campaign and messaging. So probably in the next few months we'll have something more concrete to tell you.
I didn't get to sit in on Mike Pompeo today, but before we leave, one thing I did hear him say is that while I think a lot of people are upset about politics or fighting with each other on social media, he said if you have an issue with your president or your governor, the best thing to do is to go pitch in your community. Do you believe the same? Absolutely.
The Constitution says we the people. If we don't like what's going on out there, it's our fault. We can make the change. We can vote for people in that reflect what we want to have and have done. And my 30 years, 6 months, and 5 days as an elected official, I can tell you, most everybody I've ever met in Utah and across the country are there trying to do the best they can for the right reasons. So hold our feet to the fire. If you don't like what we're doing, like somebody else, put them in place.
Governor, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.